Now, I'm going to let you guys know, if I haven't met you before, my name is Matt. I get to serve as the lead pastor here. And my wife did something that she should not have done this morning. When we were getting ready and going through our run through, and we kind of do things to make sure that, the videos are going to work right and the slides look right and all this kind of stuff, she's like, hey, be careful because Dave Ramsey's really loud. He's probably louder than my husband. And I was like, challenge accepted. Like, I want to get louder, but I'm trying to use this thing called self-control. I've heard of it. I don't know what it means yet. But it's this idea called self-control. And I want to tell you, as we're jumping into week 3 of this series called Your One Life, there's a moment that I've had more times than I want to admit. Some of you guys are thinking I'm going to talk about my driving. I'm not. I come home and it's been a long day and there's been lots of stuff going on and it's like I'm just tired. Anybody else ever been there? I want to see some hands up. Anybody else been there? And you're just like, man, it has been so tiring. It has been a long day. I've had so much going on. And where do you go? To the refrigerator. And you open the door, and maybe, like me, you've repeated this phrase. I deserve this. Right? I deserve this. I deserve that piece of chocolate cake or the fried chicken or whatever it is for you. I was laughing, and I was like, if you know me well, I'm not a big chocolate person, so I'm not going to pull out the chocolate cake. But I'm going to tell you, if you have French fries and steak and some of that stuff, I'm going to be eating it. And we find ourselves in this place where we're like, I deserve this. I've had a long day. Or maybe you've gone on a diet for a while and it's like, man, I've done so good. What harm can one all-you-can-eat sushi experience do? We're good. Maybe for you it's not in the kitchen. Maybe it's one more episode, one more scroll, one more doom scroll, right? One more snack, one more distraction, one more drink, one more toy, one more. It isn't always something that's sinful. It doesn't have to be something that's dramatic. Just small choices that slowly shape who we're becoming. And here's what I've learned. That in our lives, if we're not paying close attention, we begin to drift. I cannot tell you the number of times where I'm like, new year, new me, right? I'm going to focus. I'm going to just really bear down, and I'm going to go nuts. I'm really good at being extreme. I'm really good from doing nothing to trying to do everything that I can, no matter what it is. And I've done that in diets, and I'm like, man, just water, lemon juice. I don't put honey in there, but some cayenne pepper, and I'm going to drop a ton of weight. And guess what? I do it. And then one of my buddies goes, hey, you want to go eat sushi? If you can't tell, I love sushi. I had sushi with Dan this week. It was amazing. And I'm like, let's go do it. And then that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is when next week I'm like, that was really good sushi. Let's go do that again. And the next day I go to In-N-Out, and then I almost said Whataburger, which I'm from Texas. That's like the Texas burger place. But like you just find yourself drifting. And what I've learned is that when it comes to our spiritual lives, it's no different. That drift happens. And that we don't usually take big steps away from God, although that does happen from time to time, but we drift because we're not paying attention. And through 1,000 small, unexamined choices, we begin to drift away from our goals, whether it has to do with our finances, our health, or our spiritual life. No one wakes up and says, man, today I'm just choosing spiritual apathy. We just choose what's easiest, most comfortable. The other day, my wife and I had a long work day, and it was one of those days where we came home, and she's like, I'm going to go on a walk, and I said, have fun. I'm going to sit on the couch, right? And she's like, do you want to go with me? And I was like, my mind and like my heart wants to go with you. My body and everything else within me just wants to sit here. And it's just one simple choice. It's just one simple choice that when repeated over and over and over, it becomes a habit. It's kind of like a warm blanket on a rainy day. You know, anybody like when it's raining really hard outside, I mean, like you just open up the windows, you get the blankets, you get like a hot cup of coffee or whatever you like to drink, and it's like you sit there and you're just like, oh, this is awesome. And that in and of itself isn't bad, but over and over again, it turns into a habit. And over time, these choices build a highway by which we travel through our lives. And that's what this week is about. Not something dramatic, not some mountaintop moment, not some like, I went from 0 to 100, and man, isn't this amazing? But our everyday, consistent choices that we make moment by moment. And I think if we're honest, most of us, when we step back and we zoom out and we look at our life and we say, hey, what is part of my desire for my life? We would say, I want to make sure that I have a meaningful life. I want to make sure it counts. And this is what this series that we're looking at is about. Your one life. You have one life. You got to make it count. And we want a meaningful life. We want depth. We want peace. We want purpose. We want to look back and say, man, I made a difference in this world. But many of us secretly hope that meaning comes without limits, right? That meaning comes without limits. That meaning comes without like having to make the hard choice. We want growth without discipline. I mean, listen, here's the deal. Who wants growth without discipline? Right? We got one or two honest people in this room. I want growth without discipline. Not growth, but like growth, right? Or I want to pull out my wallet and I want to have growth without discipline. Or I want to be able to memorize the Bible, but I don't want to have the discipline of reading it. I want transformation without discomfort. I want a deep faith without a narrow path. So we avoid hard edges. We resist structure. And yet, we feel thin, busy but not formed, not transformed in ways that we want and we expect when it comes to the abundant life that we hear about and that we read about in Jesus Christ. Which leads us to an uncomfortable question. Am I practicing what I want to become? Am I practicing what I want to become? If someone was to look back, not at my highlights, not at the stuff that I post on Instagram or Facebook or X or, whatever it is today or tomorrow, but if someone was to look back at my daily choices, am I forming the kind of life that I talk about to my friends? Another way to look at it is, what habits are quietly shaping our future selves? What habits are quietly shaping our future selves? In other words, are my habits making me more of what I want, or is it revealing the drift leading me to where I don't want to go? Because whether we realize it or not, all of us are being formed. The question is, what's forming you? All of us are being formed. The question is, what's forming you? A way I love to say it, and I say it all the time because I've seen it over and over and over again. Whatever you feed grows. If you feed healthy spiritual habits, it's going to grow. If you feed your belly, it's going to grow. If you feed your 401k, it's going to grow. If you want to feed bitterness, it'll grow. If you want to feed negativity, man, it is like yeast. It works through the whole batch of dough. It will grow. If you want to feed anger, it'll grow. All of us are being formed. The question is, what is forming you? And Jesus says something that cuts through, straight through a lot of our assumptions. It's found in Matthew chapter 7. It says, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Notice what Jesus does not say. He doesn't say that the narrow road is quick. He doesn't say the narrow road is easy. He doesn't say that the narrow road isn't going to take hard choices. But he says that that narrow road leads to life. And only a few find it. In other words, pay attention to where you're going. Pay attention to how you're getting there. Luke 9 makes it even clearer. It says, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels. Can I tell you, when I talk about submitting and when I talk about abiding and when we talk about these ideas of following Christ and that it's not always easy, but it's the best life, this is what we're talking about. Wide is the road that leads to destruction, right? It doesn't take long. Just turn on the news, just turn on any popular TV show today, and we see this wide path. And it might look like a lot of fun because you can drift in between lanes as much as you want. But it says, watch out. Whatever you feed is going to grow, and if you're not careful, it is going to lead to a path of destruction. But whoever wants to save their life, you're going to lose it. Guys, when we talk about baptism, when we talk about like, hey, man, I'm going to give my life to Christ and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. I'm buried with Christ. I'm raised to new life. That's what we're talking about. That I'm saying when it comes to my life, I'm not going to follow the ways that I want to follow. I'm going to follow the ways of Jesus. And Jesus offers something that is so hard and yet so beautiful. Die to yourself. Die to yourself. I have an acquaintance that I met in college, and he was an incredible musician. I mean, the guy was amazing. And I remember my wife and him had done some stuff together, and I'd hear him play. And I remember one weekend I came back and we were hanging out, and he had this big tattoo and in just bold black letters that said, die to self. And I talked to him about it for a second, and I was like, man, tell me about your tattoo. I mean, it's not hard to interpret, right? But as I started to talk to him, he was like, well, you know, I play the bass. And he's like, I know I'm good. I know I'm good. I know I'm really good. And if I'm not careful, I begin to take pride in what I'm doing and the music that I'm playing. And so I just wanted to have this reminder that I am daily called to die to myself, that I not live, but Christ live through me. And that anything I do, whether it is hanging out with my friends, whether it's spending time with my partner, my wife, I don't know, he wasn't married at the time, but no matter what I do, that I'm not living, but Christ is living in me, even if it's playing music. Daily dying to self, not once, not occasionally, not when it's convenient, every day. Guys, discipleship is daily obedience. Daily obedience over deliberate time. And it starts with saying, God, not my will, but your will be done. I'm going to die to myself. And that's why I say, like, it's so easy, right? I mean, if we're to look on that on a piece of paper, if we were to structure it out and say, okay, this is what it's going to take to follow Christ, like, it's really easy to put on paper. It's really hard to live out, isn't it? It's really hard to live it out. And this is the great paradox of the narrow road. What feels like loss becomes life. What feels like surrender and I'm not going to do what I want to do and am I going to have enjoyment? I mean, this is going to be hard because I'm surrendering becomes freedom. What feels like limitation becomes formation. The wide road promises ease but delivers emptiness. Anybody ever experienced that before? Anybody ever eaten a bag of potato chips or chips and salsa before? You can raise your hand. It's okay. I'm with you. Anybody, as you start that, you're like, oh man, this is so good. I grew up in Texas. Chips and salsa is like part of our faith, okay? It's like when you go to a restaurant, you expect chips and salsa. If there's not chips and salsa, I'm getting up and leaving, right? But listen, here's the thing. I cannot tell you the number of times where I'm like, man, I'm starving. I am famished. And I sit down and somebody puts chips and salsa in front of me and I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry. And my instinct just takes over and I start plowing through these chips and salsa. And then they come and they ask this beautiful question. Would you like another basket? Yes, please. And before I know it, like, I'm not even hungry anymore because I've eaten so many chips and salsa. But then like half an hour later, anybody ever experienced it? You feel empty. You just feel gross. Like, it doesn't do good things to your system. And our spiritual lives are no different. And I just want to like hold up a light to something. Because for many times when it comes to like, I'm going to eat flaming hot Cheetos or I'm going to try to eat a healthy, well-balanced diet, it makes sense. But our spiritual lives sometimes are a little bit more difficult. The wide road promises ease but delivers emptiness. The narrow road costs more, but it gives more too. It gives life to the full. Jesus isn't trying to take our life from it. He's trying to keep us from wasting it. I read this verse in Luke. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit their very self? Now, if you are like me and you heard it different, you're like, Matt's saying it wrong. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and lose their very soul? I can gain all of this stuff, but what good is it if I gain all of this stuff and lose my soul? What if my heart and my relationship with Jesus gets lost in the pursuit of stuff? And Jesus isn't just talking about eternity someday. He's also talking about what we're becoming right now. You can be successful and still lose yourself, busy and still empty, comfortable and yet still unformed. You can gain the whole world, be incredibly successful, get the stuff, have the toys, be the most successful business person, leader, whatever you want and aspire to, and lose your soul. But it says, enter through the narrow gate. Because as you enter through the narrow gate, you will find life. So let's bring this down to ground. level, because most of us don't reject Jesus outright. It does happen, but most of us, like we talked about at the very beginning, it is small, everyday steps. It is death by 1,000 cuts, right? We just resist the daily part of discipleship. The daily no, the daily yes, the daily drift, the daily choices that we make. And so I want to just encourage you that denying yourself doesn't mean hating yourself. It means refusing to let impulses lead. The other day, I told you guys, like, I'd had a long day, and my wife is like, do you want to go on a walk? And I was like, no, I want to sit on the couch. She's like, yeah, but we should go on a walk first. And it's my story, so I'm sharing my highlight reel, okay? I was like, you're right. Actually, if you would have seen me, you're like, Matt, you're pathetic. Because I was like, you feel like a little 4-year-old kid. I don't want to go on a walk. I don't want to do that thing. But I was like, that's what I said in my head. But like, I put on my tennis shoes. I'm like, okay, let's go for a walk. And listen, when I made the choice to deny what I wanted to do and instead did what I knew I should do, it blessed me in ways that I couldn't have imagined. It blessed me because physically I needed to go out and go for a walk. I'd been sitting at a desk for hours and hours and hours, and I'm old now. I get like stiff and things are hard to move, and when I have to like stretch out my muscles and I need exercise and all of those things that everybody can look at me and just go, yeah, you need to do that more. I got to get out in the sun. Man, people that live in the Pacific Northwest, and I lived there for 10 years, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need the sun. When I step outside and I step into the sun, like you're going to see me like full pose. I'm like, yeah, let's soak it in. And our bodies need that vitamin D. Our bodies need the things that God created us for us to get through the sun. So I walk outside, I get to exercise, I get the sun, I get to see some of my neighborhood. Can I tell you, this is kind of like, okay, pause the message for a second. I talked a couple weeks ago about my wife starting to meet our neighbors. Something really cool is happening. We're getting to know more and more of our neighbors. We've got to go into some of their homes. We've got to help them out with different things. We're building these really crazy things. I didn't even know if they existed anymore, but it's called relationships. My wife went over and helped one of our neighbors, and she came back with, some eggs, and I'm like, man, this is like working out because my family goes through eggs like they're Taco Bell or whatever. And I mean, it's like, good grief, eggs are getting expensive. We're going to have to get some chickens or something. So we're building these relationships, and that's really cool. Okay, unpause and let's get back to the message. So we go on this walk. I get some exercise, I get some sun, and I get time with my wife. And we get to talk about some crazy stuff that's going on in our family right now. And we get to start making plans together. Instead of being further apart, it begins to draw us together. Listen, taking up your cross doesn't mean seeking suffering. It means choosing obedience even if it costs your comfort. And that's just one little, and it's not even a good example. But listen, here's what I'm going to tell you when it comes to your spiritual life. Taking up your cross doesn't mean like I'm just going to go plow head first into any hard thing because that's what I have to do. Taking your cross means dying to self. It means counting the cost. It means I know that I might suffer. It means I know that I probably will go through a trial or a tribulation because of my faith. It doesn't mean seeking it though. It means choosing obedience even if it costs your comfort. God, I trust that your way is better than my way. And in trusting that, I'm going to do this really horribly ugly word that we don't like, which I just keep talking about because I want us to get it through our heads that we need to make the choice of whether we will submit to him or not. Am I going to submit to God, the creator of the universe, or am I going to live however I want to live? And kind of the beautiful thing is it's our choice. God gives us the choice. I was listening to someone, he was an apologist, and he was talking with someone about the Christian faith, and it's like, I don't understand how a loving God could send people to hell. I just don't get it. I don't understand, and maybe you've been in that place, or maybe you've thought that before. I don't understand how a loving God could send someone to hell. And I just was, of course, I'm like leaning forward because, like, as we navigate these conversations and these discussions, he just simply said, listen, God doesn't make that choice. We make that choice. When we deny him, and he loves us enough to let us make the choice of whether we're going to follow him or not. So God is not sending anyone to hell. It's by our own actions, all the way back to the Garden of Eden in Genesis, when by our own choices, we make the decision to walk away from him. So what choices are we making each and every day? Daily living, laying down our life and living in alignment with him? Or daily making choices that keep us further and further away from the will of God? Let me put it this way. Where are you choosing the wide road because it's easier? Where are you choosing the wide road because it's easier? And listen, this is not, and I know this message is a little bit heavy, but this is not something that I say with like, man, like you're messing up and you guys need to get right. Here's what it is. It is simply a focus of our eyesight of how we're living and the choices that we're making, because I want us not to drift. Where in our lives, where in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life, in my life, am I choosing the wide road? Because the road that we're on today is shaping the person that we will become tomorrow. Guaranteed. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, we don't end up somewhere unhealthy because we're like, yeah, I'm going to go into crushing, crippling financial debt. Yeah, look, man, I cannot wait to become a non-functional alcoholic. It's nothing I'd rather do in my life. Most of the time, we don't jump into those poor and horrible decisions for our life. We end up there because we drifted. Drift is unintentional, and drift is unexamined. Drift happens when we stop intentionally choosing and we start coasting. So before we leave, I want to give a couple takeaways that we see in today's word. And then I want to give 2 intentional challenges for the week. First takeaway is the wide road doesn't require intention. Drift will take you there. The wide road doesn't require intention, right? It's wide. It's a wide road. Jesus says the road is wide and it's broad, and there are lots of people going down that road. You don't have to aim for it. Most of the time, you don't even have to pay a lot of attention. You're just drifting. You're just going down the road. You have to plan for it, and you don't have to always like pay the closest attention. Drift feels harmless at first, but over time, drift forms us, not into who we want to become. And we find, like, maybe you remember the commercial, addiction will take you further than you want to go, cost you more than you ever imagined. When it comes to our spiritual life, our drift is no different. And Jesus is saying, pay attention. He's not trying to scare us. He's inviting us to wake up. To wake up. And pay attention to our daily choices. The second thing we see is that the narrow road must be chosen daily and on purpose. Can you imagine someone in our military signing up. Like, I want to go protect our country. I'm so grateful for the freedoms that we have and who we are. And like I'm so thankful for this. And they never went and trained. And they're just like, put me on a plane. Let's go. Let's go do it. Well, what are you going to do? How are you going to operate? What's the like? It doesn't matter. I just want to go. Listen, can I encourage you that the narrow road must be chosen daily and on purpose? And we have a sword. We have God's word that instructs and directs our daily lives. And so many times we are more familiar with our remote than we are with the word of God. And then we wonder how we keep getting defeated in the battle of our spiritual lives. So the narrow road must be chosen daily and on purpose. Like I said, I'm not trying to beat anybody up. And I don't believe that God's word is seeking to do anything but to wake us up to the reality of our spiritual lives, that it is like a mist here today and gone tomorrow. I shared this earlier. I was able to go to the funeral of a lady who lived a life on purpose, focused on her mission to glorify God in areas of her life. I'm sure she made mistakes. I'm sure she drifted in different areas. But there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there. It's one of the biggest funerals I've been to in a long time. And people talked about her faithfulness and her love for not only her family and her friends, but her Lord. She chose daily whom she would serve. She chose to serve the Lord. So that leads us to our two challenges for this week. They're two simple, intentional challenges. To interrupt drift and to make wise choices that are going to help bless our lives. Number one, practice one intentional no each day. One intentional no. I know I'm going to tell you, I know at night when I go to the refrigerator and I open it up, I know what is going to cry out to me. And it's not an apple, okay? I know when I open up the refrigerator, it's not going to be the salad with some grilled chicken on the side. No. It's going to be the junk. And so what's one intentional no each day that I'm going to make, that you're going to make, that we're going to make? And maybe it has to do with your diet, but maybe it's even more important. Maybe it's with our spiritual lives. What's one intentional no? What's one act of denial to the easy path and the wide road that we are going to make each day to choose the direction that we know that leads to life and life to the full? Not because those things are even always bad. Not because in and of themselves they might be the worst decision, but they're not the best decision, and we know it. What are we going to choose to say no to so that our second challenge would come true? Practice one intentional yes each day. I know this is life-changing, found like you've never heard it before in your life. But what's one small act of following Jesus that helps you keep aligned with the path that he desires for us to be on? It might be a daily moment of prayer. It might be dusting off our Bible and opening it up. It might be obeying a nudge that we've been ignoring to do the right thing when we want to do the easy thing. It might mean showing faithfulness when no one applauds. It doesn't have to be crazy. It just needs to be deliberate. Because discipleship isn't about avoiding failure. It's about choosing formation. I've met very few successful people in my life that have said, I have never failed. I've never made a mistake. I've met many people that say, I have made mistake after mistake after mistake. But I've gotten back up and I've gotten on that path. And man, can I tell you how good God is? How He has changed my life? I still make mistakes. Isn't it good? I still make mistakes. But instead of drifting and going 5, 10, 15, 1,500 miles out of the way, I try to just let it be like a quarter mile and I get back on track. We talked about financial peace, and I think that's a great example. Because we have to pay attention to the daily choices that we're making. It's easy to drift, to spend money and stop paying attention. It's easy to treat yourself to that $7 coffee. Manzanita is going to hate me right now. And we do it once or twice a day, and we do it 4 or 5 or 7 days a week, and we're like, man, where did that extra $30, $40, $100, $150 go? And I mean, like, we've literally done it. And we look at our budget, and it's like, we spent $150 on coffee this week. And some of you are laughing, but I guarantee you, if you go home and you look at your budget, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be laughing. Financial peace is all about paying attention and telling your money where to go. Can I tell you something so much more important than that? Following Jesus is paying attention to our spiritual lives and telling God and submitting to God and taking the narrow road and saying, God, I choose to follow you. I choose to take the narrow path. I choose, even though people aren't going to like it, people might mock it, people might misunderstand it, I choose to follow you. Because the narrow road often looks ordinary. It means saying no when no one's watching. It means showing up when it's easier not to. Choosing restraint instead of indulgence. Choosing faithfulness in the midst of fear. But we all choose our hard. We all choose our hard. So this is the invitation as a church this week, not to do this drastic steps from 0 to 100, but what are some daily choices that you're going to make to say no to certain things and say yes to others? One habit to practice, one limit to embrace, one way to deny yourself so that we can truly live. And here is what I will tell you, that throughout history, that people have testified. In other words, people have said, listen, I want you to hear and I want you to know that following Jesus has radically changed my life, and it has changed the way I see the world. And I know that the abundant life, that the best life, is life found in Him. And I have that peace that cannot be taken, even if you take my life, even if you take all my resources, even if you take no matter what you take. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame. I won't trust in the illusion of gaining the whole world but losing my soul. But I'll wholly lean on Jesus' name. Guys, we're going to